Yo, what's popping? We have the first match of the Countdown Cup in the East, with starting off with the Spark against the Hunters. It ends up being a 3-1 for the Hunters. You have Spark playing Shy, Alpha Gushue, Neko, and Teru, their new support line coming in. Then you have the Hunters playing Jimu, Leaf, Gaga, Monk, and Nisha. Nepal ends up being a 2-0 for the Hunters, with Village being 125. Spark playing Sojourn, May, Rhine, Lucio, and Bab, with the Hunters rolling out on Sombra Tracer Winston, but then they see that and they're like, okay, we'll just put Jimu on Pharah, leave on Sojourn, and they'll just run it, and that's exactly what happens. Jimu on the Pharah, able to very much just beat them down. And as they're trying to cross, Leave consistently finds good picks, and Spark just kind of stay on it the entire time. I don't know if they're playing for ults, which is most likely what it was, but look at what your ults are and look at what the enemy team is and recognize that you're not really going to get anything with them anyway. So just swap. Spark got one kill total that entire time. It was really bad. But then you get Shrine, which is 199, where you get a Sombra Tracer, Winston Brig on a mirror, and it was pretty good. But Shy isn't quite able to be as maybe dominant on the Sombra as you'd like. They end up doing a dive on a Monk, and Gaga hits a really nice bubble where he stops Shy from getting his little bit of damage, and then Shy whiffs his EMP and dies. So then Chengdu get a flip, and then Spark, they cap early in a fight. They use Nano Gushue and a nice nade from Teru, and they slowly went out with a DPS line. And then they decide to tempo EMP the next fight coming up on the final, like overtime final fight. But I kind of question that tempo fight because maybe you try and drag that one out a little bit so that you have that EMP for your final fight. Because instead you use it early, but now they just can regroup and move in quite comfortably. They had enough time to do that. So I think that might have been an error where you kind of wanted to drag that one out a little longer to make that final fight a bit more uncomfortable for Chengdu moving in. Anyway, in the final fight, Jimu gets slept out of EMP, but it costs Teru his life. And then Neko is super far away from everyone. I don't know, maybe he got primaled over there, something like that. And he dies to Gaga. And then Chengdu win because the enemy team doesn't have any supports alive. Then we go over to Paraiso, where Spark actually do win, and they win 3-2. So we get them playing Sojourn Tracer, Winston Brigana against Genji Ash, Winston Brigana. So, not bad. But then you get Chengdu. Basically, this entire time on their offense, it's can Shy do enough to stop them? That's the whole thing. And the answer was, yeah, he can. On A, he's able to do what he can. Not really though. They do cap like in like 2 minutes, which isn't bad, but not great. There's a weird moment where they dive on the Shy, and then Neko says, "Oh, I'll go and help," and then he bashes across the gap, and they're like, "Well, there's just a free break," so they go and move onto him, so he just rolls over. Luckily, Gushue is able to trade out, so he contributes a little bit there. And then Shy shuts down a Jimu Nano Blade, and Chengdu gets some kills, but isn't enough because Shy slowly kills them all one by one, and that's the biggest thing. And then actually, at the final of B, Alfie decides to Nano Blade in 2v5 with Teru. Not sure what the plan was there, but it didn't work. Luckily, Shy's the GOAT. Then you get on Spark's offense, we have Jimu on the Tracer instead of the Genji. And it's still mostly, can Shy win? Like, they're hard committing on a Shy. He's able to get good picks. Even whenever he doesn't, he's hitting the nano clock and he's drawing a ton of aggro from everyone that can dive him, which lets Gushue and Alpha you go crazy in the back line, and then they make another play in the back line after. So then you get through B pretty easily. And then Leave goes over to the Sojourn. He does get some picks onto the Spark supports before the fight starts. But then Gaga trades his life for Teru, and then Spark just kind of win with ults. Specifically Nano overclock on Shy. They play the overtime really smart though, where they don't like try and stuff the doors because there's just so many different angles the enemy can walk out of. It doesn't really make any sense. And they don't overcommit. They wait for Shy to just get a pick and then they go in. So very smart from them there. But again, mostly Shy. Then we go over to Junkertown, which is a 2-1 for Chengdu. Bernard comes in for Gushue and Daisy comes in for Gaga. Then we get some Widow, Sigma, Zen, Bap gameplay with Chengdu putting Jinmu on Tracer and Spark putting Alfie on Hanzo. The Sigmas end up fighting Coast off the start on Spark's offense, and this is because Shy is over there. So Bernard wants to try and enable Shy, and then Daisy's like, well, we're not going to let that happen. They end up fighting over there instead of the cart. It kind of works out because Shy gets a kill, but he does die, and then the Sigmas go over to the cart immediately, and it looks really good for them because Jimu's not quite able to finish off Shy, so he ends up living, and Jimu has to retreat back into the back line. And then Spark's winning, and then suddenly Jimu decides to like 3v4, 3v5, or 1v5, 1v4, whatever, and he gets 3. And then Sparks pushes, stops short. I don't know how he just pulls that out, but whatever. Luckily, Bernard is able to hit a flux, and then Shy kills both supports, and they cap through A. And then it's mostly just some misplays from Spark, but I don't know. It's kind of weird because Spark they do get some 3 good stagger kills off between Alpha E and Shy, so they get about 60% of the way through B probably, and then they kind of get held up a bit because Chengdu stabilizes off of Daisy Flux, and then they kind of get stumped a little bit there. But it starts looking good in overtime. It looks like they're winning the fight. They get some good picks, but then Neko decides to jump up and down in front of Leave, and he gets his head taken off. So then Bernard dies with Flux because he doesn't have his BAP with him anymore, and then Sparker stopped in overtime. So a big misplay there by Neko for sure. But that's, I don't know. It's consistently, and there are some questions about Neko's gameplay, I would say, so far. Then we get Chengdu's offense where they put Jimmy over to the Genji instead. And it's basically like if Shy dies, they lose because the backline is heavily getting bailed up by the DPS. They can kill the backline all they want or pressure them down, but the DPS are good enough to bail them out, or Bernard hits a nice flex. One of those two things. There are still, again, some questions with Neko where I'm like, how did you die here? Don't you literally have lamp up? But he just didn't use it. So I don't know. I'm going to be a Neko hater until I have a reason not to. But I suspect maybe just put in Super Rich. I just put him in instead of the guy that's been coaching for over a year of Overwatch. Who knows? But yeah, Shy show. And then Coliseum is where Shy really gets shut down. Chengdu win 116 to 55, with Gaga coming back in for Daisy, and it's just like Shy gets the first pick of the round, and then Spark go in. They jump the gun though, and they just die. And then from there, a Nano Blade keeps them in spawn, and then Chengdu get the checkpoint after 2 fights, and Shy just isn't able to really push him past anywhere else. So that's the biggest thing with Spark, and it's always going to be how much can Shy do, and it's not enough right now. Not enough because I think their backline actually got heavier. But then we go over to the Seoul Dynasty against the LA Valiant. Ends up being a 3-0 for Seoul, but this was actually a very close game. Well, it was a close 3-0. And I know people say, oh, close 3-0, close 3-0, whatever. But this was actually quite good. So Seoul playing Prophet Fitz, Smurf, Iris, and Vindame. So Iris coming back. And then Valiant playing Easy Han, Becky, Marvel, Lengza, and Molly. So nice to see Marvel get some playtime. Dia nowhere to be seen. Lijiang is going to be a 2-0 for Seoul, but it was 199 both times. So you have Seoul playing Tracer, Sombra, Winston on a Brig against Sombra, Tracer, Winston, Brigana, which is actually the same composition in a different order, so they're mirroring. But yeah, so the biggest thing about Valiant here is Becky has one of the best maps of the season for him. Absolutely stunning. At the end of this, he ends up having 4k more damage than Prophet and 5k more than Fitz, so absolutely insane numbers. And the coordination of Valiant was insane. So on this night market, but I say all this stuff about Valiant, but there is some problems there too because they just can't seem to actually kill Seoul off the point. I don't know if it's Seoul, just living long enough, but the target focus doesn't seem to be bad. It just feels like Seoul are just on a different level when it comes to living out. Because it happens 2 times in a row here. Because they get to 99 themselves, and it looks like they're going to win. After, none of the Souls with dive attempts were doing much. Smurf isn't able to get as much value as he maybe wants to. Prophet is getting hacked and dying sometimes. He's getting kept down to a minimum. And Valiant are always killing the Soul supports better than they're killing the Valiant supports. But somehow, it looks like they just are going to win. Prophet gets nanoed and he ends up living long enough and through like 3 ults for Seoul to come back, regain their manpower, and they flip the point back. And it looks like now that Seoul's in overtime, right? That Valiant are actually going to win because they get some picks and it's like, okay, they can go. But then Seoul, again, they clutch up, they use their ults better, and they end up winning in the overtime. So they're just clutching up in the overtime far better than Valiant. But in that neutral gameplay, it feels like Valiant had the edge the whole way through. And it mostly came off of Becky, to be honest, because he was just on another level. Then you get on Gardens where it's the same thing, but Soul Cap first. And again, they can't get them off the point because they drag it all the way up to 60%. And it felt like they were losing the entire time. But between Vindame on the Lucio, Prophet coming in, Fitz coming in, Smurf coming in, Smurf getting primal in very timely manners to always be able to stall out for maximum time. Just unreal. He gets them up to 60. And then again, it's like Valiant, they're trading the backline better. Becky's still going crazy, huge coordination stuff. But then Smurf is able to get a good primal off onto Molly. Soul are able to flip in overtime. Fitz gets a good EMP the next fight on the Becky and Easy Han, and they both die until once again clutch out and win the round. So just great stuff from Soul, but Valiant had some real good stuff going on there. And again, it happens on Eichenwald even. It's a 3-2 for Soul. Saucon comes in for Marvel, but it is not an easy 3-2. So on Soul's offense, we have them playing their same thing they were doing with the Tracer, Sombra, Winston, but we get Valiant playing Sojourn, Tracer, Zarya, Brigana, because Assassin's in, so of course he's going to go on the Zarya. And honestly, I did say it's not a close 3-2, but the first 2 points did feel very Soul favored. They ran it down to Kappa pretty easily with Fitz getting a good hack on the Easy Han. Then Easy Han goes over to the Reaper, and Valiant end up stabilizing with the Sauce and Grav, but after that, Soul just take that tempo and they end up winning, which felt really weird because it looked like Valiant had the ult. They should have taken tempo, but they just didn't. They had the opportunity to, it just didn't happen. And it kind of looked like they were rolling now because I was like, well, Soul just took 3 fights to get the C. That's pretty good. But it slows right down because it looks like they're going to win, but in overtime, Sassen pulls out the Diva, Easy Han pulls out the Ashe, and Easy Han kills both Smurf and Prophet. And Saucon gets like 60% ultras on a Diva, so he's outputting a ton of damage on the Smurf as well. But then he switches back to the Zarya at the same time as Smurf, and then it's getting kind of down to the wire because that was a pretty long fight, and it's getting pretty close. But they do manage to cap at the point because they wait as long as possible for Valiant to use as many of their ults and resources as they can to stop Soul from walking, and then they commit their own ults and they end up winning with an EMP with a grab. It just kind of happens. So yeah, I don't even know if they used Grav actually. I'm not sure if he actually got it because it was like a minute whenever he swapped. But it was a pretty long C, and they held it for a long time, which makes sense. It makes sense that Zarya would be best on C. But if they had maybe played their B a bit better or their A, that could have easily been a hold for Valiant. But then they go onto their offense, and they're continuing to play, their Zarya stuff. And they just kind of walk onto the point, but they don't kill anything. So Saucon just gets pressured out and he dies. And it kind of happens like that for basically 4 minutes. But then in that overtime, Molly's able to sleep Prophet on his dive and kill him. And he also kills Vindame. And then Valiant cap out 8 overtime. So Molly being their savior. But then Easy Han's able to find some good picks on the Iris and Prophet to get Valiant to the bridge on B. And from there, the Soul Dynasty stabilized a bit. But then there's some dives going on. Molly are hitting some great sleeps again. Sleep Smurf. And Saucon eats a big pulse off of Prophet. Vindame ends up inside the enemy team and rallying, but he's really far from his team, so a huge misplay there. He gets staggered in, gets no value with it, and Valiant cap out B off of a great job dealing with the dive. And then you get some big kills from Easy Han onto C, but Saucon still dies, and Valiant's push is stopped short because now they don't have a lot of time after how long it took them to get to A, and B wasn't exactly fast, so they get stopped short by the Soul Dynasty ultimates. But it was still a pretty close map, all things considered. If only Valiant were a bit better at the other points. So then we go over to Route 66, which again, decently close. You get a 3-2 for Soul. So we have Soul playing, Tracer, Sojourn, Winston on a Brig, moving off of the Sombra, with Valiant playing Sojourn, Tracer, Zarya, Brigana, because they're bringing Saucon in or keeping him in for Route 66. And Valiant on their offense, the Zarya comp does struggle quite heavily to actually pressure anything on Soul. He's not really pressuring Smurf unless he gets high energy or the backline can't be reached. And Fitz is basically getting picks on the Sojourn pretty frequently. Even though it looks like they're going to have ults, it's been like 3 minutes before they can actually use an ult because Fitz is doing such a great job of keeping them at bay. Eventually, they are able to pop ults and they do win the fight on A and they cap out. But then Easy Han comes alive and he gets a pick on Valiant to get a lot of free push into B. Or he gets a pick on, I don't remember who it was, but on someone to get a lot of them to B. And then he gets an overclock nanoed. And he kills another 2, and they cap out B pretty easily off the back of Easy Han. Soul are able to stabilize because Prophet hits a 2k pulse and Fitz on his overclock is quite good. And then they stabilize there. They hold for quite a while, but then some weird stuff happens where Smurf ends up dying and Iris ends up dying. And then they have to wait, and they give a lot of space, basically from close to that corner all the way back to the end. And they're just waiting for Iris to respawn and build his nano boost. And then once he gets it, Nano Smurf goes into the back line and he wins out pretty easily. And they hold Valiant. But it was looking quite dangerous there for quite a while. Valiant just unable to fully get the pieces together or cap out quick enough. And then we move over to Soul's offense, where they're same compositions. And the Soul Dynasty dive is just getting Langza immediately. They cap A off of one fight, and then Easy Han goes over to the Ash off of the Sojourn. You have Soul dive onto Molly, but Valiant do a crazy play where they just commit everything onto him, and he ends up living out, and Soul falls over because they just kill everyone in that dive, and Valiant end up stabilizing on B. It takes Smurf going crazy with a Primal in the backline to win, but then Sawson hits a grab on the recontest, so suddenly they're still holding. Luckily for the Soul Dynasty, Iris is able to find a really nice anti. Soul dive onto it, Molly falls over, Valiant die, and Soul cap onto B. And then after a washed fight where Fitz just dies after an EMP and Easy Han frags, you get Sawson at very high energy. He chucks a grab to win another fight, but then the next fight he gets way too aggressive, way too far forward. He gets caught out by the dive, and after that, it's just a wrap. It's not just caught out by the dive, because I guess you have to mention that Smurf dove onto the back line so that he would get no healing. If he got that healing, he would have been fine probably. But because Smurf was able to cut resources from him, he does fall over. He was just way too far forward, no speed boost, no real help, and Soul Dynasty cap pretty easily. So yeah, that's gonna be it. Let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you so much for watching. Like this video if you like it, subscribe for more daily Overwatch League content, and deuces.